Welcome to another edition of NewsMaker Live right here on DBS Television. We are also on Facebook and the DBS TV website. My name is Timothy Poleon. We go up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we conclude with the clip that peaked. My guest this evening is former St. Lucia Prime Minister. He's also the leader of the Parliamentary Opposition. He's also the MP for Micoud South, Mr. Alan Chastanet. He's been out of state for a few weeks now, and welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Great to be back. Thank you, Tim.
Why were you out for so long? It's appeared that you abandoned the people of Micoud South and also the position of leader of the opposition, as if you absconded.
Absolutely not. I've been in politics now for 18 years. Times has flown, since I've been in, and it's been constant. So even when we lost in 2011, if you remember, from the get-go, I was working and eventually took over the leadership of the party in 2013. And then from the time we took over as Prime Minister in 2016, it was a lot of time, a very serious commitment, one I don't regret. But the persons that paid a very heavy price for that was my family. So a lot of graduations, a lot of events that my kids were going to, things that were important to my wife, all became second and third based on my commitment to my own constituency and obviously to the people of St. Lucia. My son is exploring different university options right now, and I wanted to be there with him to go on tour. But probably the biggest reason why I was away is my sister was getting married. My sister is 60 years of age, and I'm very proud of her because she survived level 3 cancer, breast cancer, something she's been very open about, and was during the COVID period. And we couldn't be there for her. She was there by herself, and I'm very grateful that she had an incredible partner, and he was there to support her all the way through. We as a family made a decision that we would all go to England and be there with her and build up to the wedding. And I'm very, very happy, very glad that I did that. It was a great decision. I spent time with my family and was educating myself. A lot of reading, went to a lot of seminars, and I'm very, very grateful for the time. So I think that my family deserved and earned that time with me.
Why put yourself in such a position where you have to be away from your family for so long and miss so many of the important things that are happening in their lives? All for politics.
I ask that question over and over again, and it's an important question to ask yourself. I think the Lord puts a hand and determines who you are. I mean, clearly your parents and your environment have a tremendous amount to do with those things. But in my case, I've always wanted to help the underdog. So whether it was being in playing sports, whatever I did in my life, I always wanted to help the underdog. And I just wanted to see persons that I felt that were being oppressed or not really living to their full potential to do so. And I remain committed to that. I've never been a person that has set out to become a billionaire. That was never my goal in life. Do I want to have a successful business? Yes. So Coco Palm was great. The work that I have done and the people I've had the opportunity of working for has been fantastic. But politics, I think, in many ways has been my calling. Maybe not the political side of it, but certainly the economic development and social development side of it, for sure.
This week's we got wind and news of the ruling by a judge. You wanted leave to file a claim against the Comptroller of Customs for his decision basically to discontinue that matter against Dr. Ernest Hilaire in the Range Rover saga. You seem to have an obsession with this. Why is that so?
No obsession. I mean, I think that Ernest has tried many times to make it out that it's a personal thing between him and myself. This really has to do with our Constitution and the rule of law. And in Ernest's case, he abused that. And there's clear evidence to show that. A lot of people, I think, still are confused as to what the issue was. The court case that was brought against Ernest by Customs was simply asking him to provide proof that he owned the car that he brought in, that he declared to be his. That's all. And why was that important? Is because there was clear evidence to show that that same car had been registered in the name of the St. Lucia High Commission. And it was registered in the name of the High Commission, clearly, so that he could get the car duty-free in the UK, save 12.5%. So it's an abuse of his office. And I think that we politicians are accused on many occasions of saying things and making declarations about each other, of being corrupt, and never prove it. So for me, was to put it through the system. I've never gone out to make any declarations that are not true. And it's to push the system to do the right thing. So the controller of customs has the discretion to make decisions. And it comes to a very, very important thing, Tim. The Saint Lucia Constitution. What is the Saint Lucia Constitution? The Saint Lucia Constitution is a contract between the people, the citizens of a country, and those persons that we give authority to. Because there's no way to run a country that every citizen can be there to vote on every single decision that's made. So we have to empower and trust persons of authority to make those decisions on our behalf. And so the democratic system that we have set up a structure. What's that structure? The structure is we have a cabinet. And we first elect a parliament. And out of the parliament, the prime minister selects his cabinet. The cabinet drafts legislation. So if they see something wrong in society, they draft the laws. Parliament debates those laws. But as I've said many times, that the independence between cabinet and parliament doesn't exist, and even more so when you have 15-2. 14 of the persons who are sitting in parliament sit in cabinet. So you don't really expect them to have voted for something in cabinet and then to come around and be objective in their voting, although they should. Because they're accountable not to their party as a parliamentarian, they're accountable to the persons who elected them to that parliament.
But let's backtrack a bit. Earlier on you said that the Comptroller of Customs has the discretion.
Yep.
But he exercised that discretion. Why challenge that decision that he took?
Because there is clear evidence to suggest that decision that he made was not done objectively. So remember, he was a new Controller of Customs, just appointed. You had a situation where the DPP was prosecuting the case. You had a situation where the new Attorney General was, and still is, I think, the lawyer for Hilaire. Why is it that when he made the decision, that is the Controller of Customs, that he didn't consult the DPP? He claims he didn't seek any specific advice from the AG. The Director of Finance. The Director of Finance is an important person in this particular situation because the Director of Finance wrote a letter to the Controller of Customs saying that there's evidence to show that the car was registered in the name of the state. But the Ministry of Finance never knew that that was the case. So it asked Customs, because the car came through Customs. Customs has the authority to contact the UK authorities to confirm whether the car was registered under the name of the Saint Lucia High Commission. So there was an obligation for the Controller of Customs to discuss it with the Director of Finance. He didn't. He didn't have a discussion with the former Controller of Customs, who was spearheading the investigation. And then, more importantly, when he was pushed in the court case to say why he withdrew it, he said because he was satisfied that the bill of lading was sufficient proof of ownership of the car. Now, those persons who bring things in on a regular basis, particularly cars, you would know a bill of lading is not proof. But there are times in which the customs can accept a bill of lading. And there are exceptions. The exception would be if it was a second-hand car and it's over 10 years of age, you can say, I can't find the registration of the vehicle. And customs would accept the bill of lading and assess it on the value. In this particular case, it was a brand new car. In fact, customs had it in their files that the red car was registered in the name of the St. Lucia High Commission. So accepting a bill of lading, right, there's something wrong. Why would you do that?
But why, Mr. Chastanet, no one wants to see it your way? Because earlier on you said that there's been an abuse and evidence to show it. So that is basically from your perspective, but not from the perspective of the Comptroller of Customs and other agents of the government, entities that should be presiding over this particular matter.
I don't think that's true, because there was a case that was brought to him. And why was the case brought to the courts? If you remember, Tim, that there are several cases in the last couple of years that customs lost and had to repay people for assets that they seized. Mm-hmm. You're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And what the court basically was saying to customs, when you have a situation and you believe that you have exhausted every attempt to get the persons to bring in the proper information, before you seize it, bring it to court and allow the court to establish an order. Okay, so that there's full transparency. And that's exactly what was done. Several attempts had been made over the last couple of years, asking Hilaire and his lawyer Thaddeus to provide the information. And instead, what did they do? They threw dust in people's eyes to say this was a political witch hunt. No political witch hunt. You were involved in a situation where, by being the High Commissioner of St. Lucia, our most senior person representing us in England and Europe, we found out after the fact that you appointed Jufali as our ambassador to IMO. We found out after the fact. You didn't even go through the right processes. So when he made the decision to register the car in the name of the High Commission, and we have all the facts. You have an affidavit from the Range Rover people, you have an affidavit from the Foreign Office in England, you have the actual document registering the vehicle as under the St. Lucia High Commission. So the question is, who gave you the authority to do that? That is, in essence, what the question that Customs was asking. So the fact that a public officer is given that kind of latitude, it's okay. But in this particular instance, given the amount of visibility on this issue and the controversy about this issue, one would have thought that the Comptroller of Customs would have acted with due care. I think that he abused his office in making this discretionary decision and how he made the discretionary, because the facts don't fit.
But a judge does not believe that. And in this particular matter, the judge is a higher authority.
No, well, see, this is the issue. The case has nothing, the case that I had was asking for leave. The judge made it very clear. This case was not here to judge those facts. It's not what the case was about. The case was whether, in fact, he believed that this case could be fought in court. And what he said, the judge, is that the DPP, he believes, was providing advice. The former Comptroller of Customs said, no, I met with the DPP agreed to take over the case, I sent my files to the DPP's office, and here's a letter showing that I sent everything over to the DPP. The judge said that because the DPP had not formally answered to that letter, he concluded that the DPP's office was not involved, and therefore the Comptroller of Customs was free to make the decision. And he stopped at that point. Now, I want to say that that's fine. And that's why we have the process of appeals. If you remember in the case, the defamation case that I had with Hilaire, we lost in the High Court, and we appealed, and we won in the Court of Appeal. And then he appealed, and we won in the Privy Council. So this case is far from being over. I think that the facts speak very clearly for themselves. And I think that this would be severely egregious if we allow this to continue. And United Workers' Party wants to make it very clear that we're going to hold everyone accountable and that we have a system, we have a democracy, and we feel that we need to put pressure all the time. We're not going to sit back and just allow this matter that there is a clear abuse of office to go by. And I think that that's exactly what Hilaire would want to see happen, is that this goes by. Because every time that there's an opportunity to bring this to the courts, right, he finds a way to run away from it. And this is the classic example. You're making it out that you were being brought to the court for some criminal charge. Yes, it would have been criminal if you had lied, because you gave a declaration that the car belonged to you. Now, we're all free to check the information that we want to check. But I ask you the question. If a controller of customs has in his files an affidavit from Range Rover saying that the car belonged to the High Commission, and if there's an affidavit from the Foreign Office, if in fact that when you went and checked the registry, the car was registered in the name of the High Commission, and that there's documentation to show communication between the High Commission's office and also Hilaire's personal assistant that says we made a mistake and the car doesn't belong to Tafawul Williams, but the car belongs to the High Commission. There's something wrong. There's no different, Tim, than the Auditor General, when it audited the High Commission office, found out that there was an account opened up in the name of the St. Lucia High Commission called the St. Lucia High Commission IMO account. No permission had been sought to open up that account, which is under the Financial Act that they must do that. And that £66,500 had been put into that account.
For you, Mr. Chastanet, don't you think that this is more of a political issue more than a moral matter?
No.
That you want to settle?
No.
Would you be so persistent if it's just an ordinary person as opposed to a political rival?
It's not an ordinary person.
If it were.
It's not an ordinary person. So let's see how far-reaching this is. So Hilaire today is the Deputy Prime Minister of St. Lucia, correct? Mm-hmm. And he's the Minister of Tourism, he's the Minister of Investment, he's the Minister of CIP. Remember, we talked about that this Constitution is a contract that allows us to empower certain positions. But those positions, that authority is given under the presumption that they're going to be protecting the people. So the Controller of Customs is supposed to be protecting whom? People. Attorney General, when he is a public officer, is supposed to be protecting whom? The people. Permanent secretaries are called chief accounting officers. They are the eyes and the ears of the citizens of this country to help enforce and protect this thing, the Constitution, which is the contract with the people. So Hilaire comes in, and what does he do? He appoints a chairman of Invest St. Lucia, personal friend. The person that ends up getting the managing director position at Invest St. Lucia, personal friend. The person who's the chairman of CIP, Lauren Theophilus, his lawyer. The person who's the CEO, personal friend. The person who is the chairman of the Tourism Authority, Thaddeus Antoine, his lawyer. The person who is the Attorney General is his lawyer. And then we turn around that Hilaire's brother, who is retired, who they put in charge of the delivery unit, has now become the permanent secretary in economic development. Here, a party that talks about supporting the youth, and you have all those persons who are career people in the civil service have been bypassed to put Hilaire's brother. What's the danger? The danger is, can I convince you that those persons are going to put St. Lucia first? Are going to support the Constitution of this country and protect the people of St. Lucia? Do you genuinely believe that to be the case? So it's a dangerous precedent, because what we have is exactly what the Labour Party accused my government of. Friends and family. All of them. And when you allow those people, Tim, to take control of our government and put them in positions in which they are given discretionary decisions. When you think they're making the wrong decisions, we have to stand up and hold them accountable. They are accountable to the people, not to the Labour Party. And I think that the example of what took place in England while Hilaire was the High Commission is disgraceful, is disgusting. I remember when he was on your show before the elections and you asked him, did you give diplomatic passports to Jufali? He gave you all kinds of story. But there's a letter. He's the one who wrote to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs asking for all the information in order to get the passports for Jufali, and it was delivered to his office and he personally delivered it to Jufali.
It's not a case of not putting enough safeguards in place to protect the people and to ensure that those who are representing the interests do so in a very in a manner that does not put the country into disrepute or ensure that they act with integrity. And you were in a position to make a difference because you were Prime Minister of St. Lucia between 2016 and 2021. But in particular with that Range Rover matter, what did you do to ensure that it was dealt with satisfactorily?
I stayed
because
away.
you had a PS, you had the Comptroller of Customs. You had also
when you say
Attorney
I
General.
had, I said I had. So let's make it very clear. I knew of the information. I allowed the information to go through its proper channels. So the first channel they went to was the Director of Finance. Question was written to the Director of Finance that said that the High Commission has been asked to do an audit. The audit has revealed that there was a car that was belonging to the High Commission, and that car was exported to St. Lucia, and we believe it was exported along with the former High Commissioner's personal effects. Nobody made any allegations. So that went to the Director of Finance. The Director of Finance, on researching the thing, found out that there was never any permission given, or there was never a decision, a deliberate decision made by the government of St. Lucia to purchase a vehicle. Additionally, the only person can dispose of a government of St. Lucia asset is the Director of Finance. The Director of Finance said there is no record of us approving to dispose of this asset. So the Director of Finance wrote to the Controller of Customs. Now, at the point that the Director of Finance writes to the Controller of Customs, the Controller of Customs has no discretionary powers at that point. They've been asked a deliberate question by the Director of Finance. Now, one of the Controllers of Customs said that this matter can be settled if the Ministry of Foreign Affairs pays the VAT. That's flawed. Because in order for Hilaire to get the car duty-free, so remember, he's a returning diplomat, entitled to a duty-free car. But the condition to that concession is the car must belong to him. So it still comes back to the question that the Director of Finance wrote. So the fact here is that we allowed, and certainly for me, allowed the process to go through. But as the Minister of Finance and as the Prime Minister, I kept asking questions every now and then. This is not something that I was obsessed with. But when I see that people are avoiding to hold anybody accountable, there's something wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong. And you're 100% correct. And that's why there are institutions and particular positions in our government that we need to be very careful who those persons are. So let's take the Public Service Commission and what has just happened at the Public Service Commission. When it came to approving the appointment of the current, I don't know whether he's still the acting Chief Commissioner, because I've heard the Prime Minister opine and I was completely confused as to what he was saying. He said there's nobody in charge. But that came to the Public Service Commission.
But he said he is the acting Police Commissioner.
Okay. That had to be approved by the Public Service Commission. The Police Welfare Association wrote to the Public Service Commission and said, in considering this gentleman, there are several allegations that are being made against him, and we feel that those allegations should be investigated before you confirm it. 3-2 was a split at the Public Service Commission on a decision as important as that.
But at least the commission did rule on this matter.
Yes, but the person who is the current head of the Public Service Commission is a person that was appointed by the government. Now, you see, this is where I'm saying to you, is we as citizens...
But the previous head would have been appointed by your administration.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, I deliberately tried to make sure that we appointed people that were independently minded. Okay? I don't want anybody to come and say yes persons to me. And that's what I'm saying to you. When you now pick people that you're friends, that there is a long history of association with your party or with you, then you're compromising the situation.
But should the Public Service Commission, the life of the Public Service Commission, end after the government appoints it, leaves office?
It doesn't.
Office?
It's on a rotation.
No, I'm just saying, should that be the case?
Well, I think that, it's 40 years
because
now.
We all know that commissions and boards consist of, in the main, political appointees.
And this is why, again, you asked a very important question. If we are empowering, authorizing people to make discretionary decisions for us, so when we had the position of the chairman of the Electoral Commission, is a position that's supposed to be appointed by the Governor General in their own mind. Now, if you already have the Prime Minister appointing one person, the Leader of the Opposition appointing another person, it's saying to you that when the Governor General appoints somebody who's independent of two political parties. Because if it was supposed to be a political party person representing it, the Constitution would have said, let the Prime Minister or the Leader of the Opposition appoint. So we have to learn how to interpret the language of our own Constitution and of our own laws. They're very carefully crafted. But there's a subtlety. So when it says that the Controller of Customs is free to make that decision, it doesn't mean they're free to make any decision. You have to make a decision in which there is a logical and an evidence-based decision. And if in fact at any point, whether it's the Leader of the Opposition or any other institution in St. Lucia, questions that decision, then the Controller of Customs, I believe, owes it to them to give an explanation.
Since from your perspective there's an abuse of the Constitution, does that mean that we should be moving fervently to reform our Constitution? Or is it a case where the Constitution is not being adhered to?
I think it's a bit of both. I've said that for the longest time. We've had several occasions, not only in St. Lucia, but throughout the OECS, when it comes to boundaries. Boundaries are a very important thing.
Electoral boundaries.
Electoral boundaries. Okay? Very important. And when you look at the other Commonwealth countries, they have amended their laws to do what? One, you cannot have the Speaker of the House as the chairman. Everybody knows the Speaker of the House is biased, regardless of which party. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you can't have that person as the deciding vote. Secondly, what they said is that the changing of boundaries ought to be tied to a milestone. The milestone that most countries around the world attach it to is the census. That makes sense. You can't leave it at the discretion of a government who is in office that all of a sudden want to change the boundaries. It becomes very suspicious. It also says that the only discretionary decision that Parliament makes is how many boundaries and what's the variation. You're going to allow 0 variation, 10% variation, 15% variation, 20% variation. Those are the decisions that Parliament gets to make. And then more importantly, that in the case of St. Lucia, the recommendation was made that the Boundaries Commission should be part of the Electoral Commission. And that it should have professionals. And that the option of whether you're going to make the report public or not is taken away. All the reports must be made public and must be widely circulated before a final decision is made. So I think that we have to learn human nature and take from other countries' experience and refine some of our laws, because sometimes maybe the language is a little bit too vague and it's difficult. But here's the important part. The entity that is supposed to keep the glue, to hold all of these laws accountable, is the judiciary, the judges. And a situation has happened here in St. Lucia. Many, but now we have a very glaring decision that was made by a judge that is, I think, an infringement on the greatest breach of trust that we've ever seen. So you have your cabinet, you have your parliament, and then you have your judiciary. So when parliament writes a law, it is for the judiciary to make sure that that law does not take away and restrict people's rights. And it must be that they're independent. So it's like a football match. You have two teams and you have the referees. If the referee is biased towards one team, is that fair? Everybody expects the referee to be objective. And in this particular case, we expect that the judiciary has to be independent. So when you have a judge recusing himself from a case because of interference by an attorney general who was a party to the case, and I don't know what else took place. In the judge, in his public preamble, while we had the court case, said that there are things that are happening behind the curtain, and those things must come to the forefront. When you have a prime minister and a speaker of the House going to a court to say that they went there to make sure that justice was being done. When you have an attorney general who says we don't need a state of emergency to impose a curfew. When you have a suppression act that gives police officers the right to go and search, the Constitution says you cannot do that. Cannot. We just saw it with the Bonanza land. So the board has a discretionary decision to manage the state's asset, the people's asset, and made a decision that a piece of land that was valued at $7 million, that they allowed it to be revalued at $3.5 million, and they sold it for $2.5 million. And who are those persons? Mikey Pilgrim? John Peters? You think they don't know better? The same minister, Richard Frederick. I want to ask him, the piece of land in town, in front of a major department store, that you caused to be sold in 2007, 1,800 square feet, was sold for $2 million. Over $1,000 a square foot.
But overhauling of the system that you're making reference to, this is something that normally comes up when politicians are in opposition. So a prime minister, while he's in office, he's not preoccupied with such issues, such as what he deems to be breaches, what he deems to be certain things in the system that are being abused and so on. Why are you preoccupied with this right now? Those inconsistencies, the breaches and so on, when you were prime minister of this country?
So when I was prime minister, remember the first bill that we passed, right, was to take away the statute of limitations on any corruption, which came out of a recommendation. We attempted to deal with the boundaries, but to deal with the boundaries, you needed, because we didn't have 2/3 majority, you needed the support of the government, of the opposition. We never got that. I used the Attorney General, that there was no way that she should be the Attorney General under my administration, particularly when she had me in court. I didn't think I could trust her opinion, because I didn't agree with what she agreed to do. So we attempted, but at the same time, Tim, and I think that that's where we are in this country, and I want to say that the reason why some of these things are important, because this is a breach of trust. And I think that that's what this government has done. In 2 years, they have so significantly breached the trust of the people. The few little things that they promised, because all they could do was beat pans. Where was the plan? So there was one plan. They said they were going to give $1,500. They said the $500 that we gave was insufficient. They were going to give $1,500. The Prime Minister quickly said he never said that. The videos came out to show where he actually had said that. He said he was going to give the fishermen back the $2.50. Here we are 2 years later. That still has not happened. They said they're going to if you go in their manifesto, they're going to have the cruise ship port in Vieux Fort. They've not done that. In fact, they've gone the opposite direction. And they're allowing a company to come in and make a significant investment into Castries, which is going to be at the demise and the cost, the expense of the people in Vieux Fort.
But the The tourism minister claimed this week that you were scheduled to have a similar agreement with GPH to lease the seaports.
GPH had made a proposal to us, and we never agreed to the proposal. That's why we never signed it. Right? And I said to GPH, I would not sign a deal that would compromise Viewfort. Viewfort is the game changer.
But you intended to lease our seaports.
No, that's what they proposed.
Okay, but you wouldn't have agreed to this?
No.
Why?
I would have agreed to it if the deal was a good deal for us.
What you would consider a good deal?
A sharing of the revenue. So the government has promised the details of the deal. I don't know what they are. I can only tell you what was in the deal before. So I know what GPH is going to do. GPH is going to leverage its position in the Caribbean, and the head tax that's currently at $6.50, I guarantee you that it's going to go somewhere between $12 and $15. And the government of St. Lucia would have given away all of that revenue. Even if now they've gone and amended the deal to say, well, we'll consider a Viewfort. They're not. Because the deal that GPH was proposing to us was concentrating on building up more capacity in Castries. But that makes good business sense for them. So you're telling me that you're going to give away $400 million worth of revenue over 40 years to get a $40 million investment. Now think for a moment. The government just went and borrowed 200 million EC from the Arabs, Saudis, right, for the hospital. But you're going to give away $400 million of revenue to get a $40 million investment? Look, the plan that we articulated for for Castries was the following. One, I hear the Minister of Tourism saying that I never built any hotel rooms. I mean, have you heard anything more ridiculous? I built my own hotel. Our family invested in Coco Palm here in Saint Lucia. Harbor Club. While I was in opposition, I encouraged investment in this country and helped support that investment in this country. Serenity in 2017 at Coconut Bay, 37 new rooms. The refurbishment of Sugar Beach. The same hotel they just went and signed and had a groundbreaking for. Who do you think was the Prime Minister that brought those investors to St. Lucia to replace Barrett Elite Resorts? So, Marriott Courtyard at Point Seraphine. Break down Point Seraphine, rebuild commercial downstairs, offices upstairs, because you cannot have a critical piece of asset like that, Tim, dependent only on cruise tourism. And then the big one was really to take the container port out of Castries and put it in a cul-de-sac and replace the container port with a proper convention center, proper theater, and hotel. Now, if you can bring 300, 400 hotel rooms into Castries, life after dark. So instead of everybody hanging around at Rodney Bay, or what you see at Rodney Bay at night, is what you should be seeing in Castries. And what's the advantage? You have a regional airport. Most of our meetings and incentives business comes from the region. So you have now a huge advantage where you fly in on the plane and your conference hotel is right there with proper convention facilities, and you enhance Castries. Let's break down the Parliament building and clear out that area and build it back as a park. Let's replace the CDCs, and we were doing that and bringing people to different locations, but you build the homes for them first before you break down. And then now, Viewfort. You have to compete against Barbados, and you have to compete against Antigua for home porting. How are you going to compete against home porting against them if you have an hour and a half, 2-hour drive to come to Castries? The cost of doing that is prohibitive. By having now a major port in Viewfort, you have now a significant advantage, but even more importantly, the economic impact of cruise tourism in the south will have tenfold more impact than in the north. The opportunities for new attractions in the south, amazing. Between Viewfort and Soufriere, the time that it used to take to come to Soufriere, hour and a half. Now you're talking about under a half an hour. The two Mikus and Viewfort itself, all of a sudden now the taxi drivers no longer just have to depend on carrying people from Viewfort up north.
But that is your vision. The St. Lucia Labour Party has its own vision because it has a mandate from the people of St. Lucia. It does not have to buy into your ideas.
Absolutely not. Okay? But if you look at their manifesto, they said they would build a crucial port. Now, again, elections are going to be coming up. So people now can compare the pans to the plans and see which one you prefer. We're talking about growing this country. We're talking about making this country better. I will never criticize this government if what they're taking, what we started, and they're making it better, or they come up with a new twist to make it better. But how can you tell me giving away $400 million in revenue and concentrating your development in cast trees is a good plan?
What way would the resources come from to develop our ports in the absence of GPH? Are they bringing in any other resources, human resources? Because why would you have had discussions with them in the first place, initially?
Because they were going around the Caribbean. In fact, they had started discussions with the previous government. If you remember, they had signed a deal with Mia Motley, and she rejected the deal. Right? So I'm happy to speak to everybody and anybody, but we're going to sign a deal that makes sense. So it's like HIA Airport. There was no contract signed. When we came in as a government, the IFC had been attempting to broker a deal where a person was going to get the concession, you understand what I mean, a 30-year concession at the airport, but they wanted $60 per head, US. And I would be happy to sign that deal if, in fact, after they made back their investment with a fair return, that then the concession comes back to the government of St. Lucia. But why would I continue paying somebody $60 US a head for 30 years? That's over $1 billion US minimum of revenue to build a $180 million airport. That makes no sense. So let's look at a comparable deal. We did a deal with the Taiwanese where we borrowed the money, and it's costing $35 a head. So that means that $25 a head is coming to the coffers of the people of St. Lucia during that period. And if, in fact, we do better than we expected, then we pay off the loan quicker. And this government, they love to push around the numbers. Said, what has happened with COVID shows that they were right and they should have assigned the debt to somebody else. No, they're actually wrong. Because it proved that we were correct. So even with COVID, which everybody has to admit is one of the greatest disasters to happen to tourism. We can't see a COVID happening anytime soon. Like the same way, with the same impact. The money was there to pay the loan. They've never been able to miss the loan. So I believe that where bringing foreign direct investment in our country makes sense and everybody benefits from it, I'll support it. But I think if, in fact, the government of St. Lucia and the people of St. Lucia can do it, they should.
Is that a good model?
Which one?
The foreign direct investment model. When, for example, we have to give so much for so little in terms of our resources, and sometimes all we have to show for it is just employment opportunities for a few workers, but then the salary. I mean, it's never something that our employers feel is justified in terms of the amount they are paid. I cannot imagine that the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, agreeing to lease his ports.
But he did bring sandals in.
No, but would he? Do you think would he? Dr. Ralph.
Well, he's building a port now. Mm-hmm. You know that.
Yeah.
Right. So they've expanded their port. So I have no idea who's going to run the port for him. But look, at the end of the day,
but those are very sensitive issues. Should we be leasing our ports?
Well,
even thinking about it.
If in fact the person who is going to lease the port is going to bring capital investment in substantially, and there's going to be, as I said to you, a sharing of the profits. I don't believe in wholeheartedly handing over all of your revenue. I think that there is a risk to doing it, and I think there's a return that the person expects. And I think we should encourage that, if in fact it means that they're putting up the investment. But anything above that should be shared. And so to me, there has to be a fairness. I mean, you asked about foreign direct investment. You bring foreign direct investment when there are capital requirements that we cannot do locally. So there are not a lot of St. Lucians who could have built a Sandals or built a Wyndham, St. James property. okay, or Coconut Bay. Still, there isn't many St. Lucians. I mean, we see Bay Gardens, we see Coco Palm, and we see Airbnb and some smaller guest houses. But you need some of those bigger hotels. And the concessions on a large part, Tim, are not to do with the investment as much as it is an export industry. Okay? So tourism is an export. You know, I remember sitting down with the IMF and the World Bank, and I said, how many jobs and how much tax do we collect from a hotel room that doesn't exist? And the answer is nothing. So the first thing you have to do in tourism is to get the hotel room built. To build a hotel room today is anywhere between 250,000 US to $1.5 million US per room. Now, if somebody is going to make that kind of investment in your country, and let's look at it, we see what the price of airfares are in St. Lucia, some of the highest in the region. Our electricity cost is some of the highest. And while we complain about wage bills, in the tourism sector, it pays the highest wage bills of any other sector. And relative to a Mexico or Dominican Republic or even a Jamaica, we're high. The cost of bringing a container into St. Lucia is 3 or 4 times as much it is to bring it anywhere else. So it means that the operating cost of that hotel is going to be greater. Now, does the brand of St. Lucia, is it strong enough that that hotelier can get a room rate that can cover all of that risk? That is what we are facing. And when we give incentives, it's to try to level that playing field from that regard, from that position. So it is not about sometimes giving concessions where we're conceding something. In the case of GPH, we're conceding the $6.50. We're also conceding any increase in that tax that they're going to get, we're conceding that. When they were negotiating with us, they were saying, well, after $15, we will share how much we're going to make. I don't know if that government kept these terms. I don't know. They've made nothing available to us. All I can see is that this gentleman is going to spend $40 million, and part of that money is for bananas and for souffleur. So let's say that those cost $10 million. So $30 million is going to go into the port. And that's the easiest investment, because what he's going to do is extend the berth at Point Seraphine and extend the berth at on the North Port, and then he's getting all the revenue. Why didn't you take some of the money from Saudi Arabia and do that and keep your revenue? That would be the easiest thing to do. $40 million is not a lot of money, Tim.
Should it be mandatory that when governments are signing such agreements, that there should be full disclosure?
You know, I have understood in the past why there are, confidentiality agreements, particularly when it's in the beginning part of the negotiation. But certainly, if I was to get back into office, which I hope I do, I absolutely will change the law that on a signing of any contract, that we must make it public. And therefore, all the investors will know that these documents are going to be made public. I think that it doesn't benefit anyone by keeping them confidential, because people are always going to be suspicious anyway. So the harm is going to be done whether you show it, or the harm is going to be done if you don't show it. And I think maybe it will hold governments much more accountable, because knowing that it's going to be public, that they're going to have to negotiate what people consider to be a fair deal, and they're going to have to be able to come out publicly and to justify and support what they're doing.
Carrying capacity. I mean, there seems to be an obsession with the construction of hotels in St. Lucia. Therefore, do you think, I mean, obviously the time will come when we'll see this as requiring the use of our resources to the extent that people are going to suffer. Take, for example, the availability of potable water. For how long should we continue to concentrate on the construction of hotels, increasing our hotel rooms on island?
Well, the great thing is that there's technology. We've not even gotten into, in a major way in this country yet, with desal plants. So Antigua, Aruba, Bahamas, a lot of countries have become very dependent on desalinization plants. You must be able to know that the investments you have to make in capacity. So I was always struggling to try to figure out, how do you measure potential? You know, people would come to St. Lucia and they'd say to me, boy, Prime Minister, or even when I was just Alan, St. Lucia has so much potential. But unless you can actually put a number to that, to tell you how much potential you have, you don't know how successful or what a failure you are. And so, because of our smallness of land, you have to maximize the output of land, in my opinion. Okay? So, St. Lucia and Singapore are physically the same size, 240 square miles. Right? And the GDP of Singapore is in excess of $300 billion. So their output per square mile is about $1.2 billion to $1.3 billion per acre. St. Lucia's output per acre in this country is 9 million. Now I hear all the critics, oh, well, it's St. Lucia and we're here in the Caribbean, Singapore is in the Far East and it's a different story. Okay, well, when we measured all of the other islands, Aruba, as an example, is 70 square miles, not 240, have 110,000 people, and they have an output of $40 million per acre. I just came from Belize. Belize is what, 5 or 6 times the size of St. Lucia in landmass, twice the population, and has a GDP less than St. Lucia. So imagine how dismal their output per acre is.
I think Belize is a lot larger than St. Lucia.
As I said,
over 8,000 square miles.
Okay, so now all of a sudden, what does Aruba have? Why does Aruba have 40 million per acre? They have 15,000 hotel rooms. They don't have agriculture. They don't have manufacturing. They don't have financial services. So it means that St. Lucia, if we had 15,000 rooms, exponentially, our GDP is going to be much greater because we do have agriculture, we do have manufacturing, we do have financial services, which will all benefit with the growth in tourism. So you have to ask the question, we're at 5,000 hotel rooms. Can St. Lucia cope with 15,000 hotel rooms? And I believe the answer is easily yes. But to your point now, it's about capacity. So that is why now you have to triple the size of the airport. You have to put proper healthcare facilities in. You have to fix up your roads. You have to now more water. You have to improve the distribution of electricity. Because again, if you now bring that kind of consumption in your country, yes, you're going to consume more electricity, but the efficiency of your production of electricity is going to get much better.
But why have we failed so badly to make use of our landmass that will redound to the benefit of the St. Lucian public? Because what St. Lucians really want is to work and to thrive in their homeland.
Correct.
They do not want to look outwards. They don't want to go to the United States, go to work on a farm in Canada. So therefore, do you think that you and other leaders have failed the people in this regard? Well, in properly utilizing our limited resources and our landmass?
So I think that when Sir John was coming back into elections in 2006, was the first time that I started seeing a holistic plan for St. Lucia. If you remember, it was called the Quadrant Plan. Mm-hmm. Minister Doverne at the time, myself and Sir John, were the main architects behind that. And we said we need to diversify the development of our country. Too much is being concentrated in the north. So there was a road networks, there were port developments, the whole idea of village tourism came about. Sadly, when Sir John died, the members of his cabinet did not buy into that concept. Osbert was quickly gone, and they became a different vision. I have no idea what that vision, even though I was sitting in cabinet. I was a senator in those days, and I focused on what I was supposed to do for tourism. When we went into opposition, we focused on building a new St. Lucia. And that building of new St. Lucia was on the work that had already been done on the Quadrant Plan. And when we came in, we started executing that plan from the beginning. But in addition to the physical stuff, there was the social aspects of it. The sporting facilities, the healthcare centers, the education, the training of persons to be able to go into this. All of that work had started, Tim. So when people sit and they tell me, oh, you're only focusing on this one thing, that's not true. We were spending $10 million a year on fixing up schools. Look at the amount of money that was being fixed in sporting facilities. What we did with the academy and what we had planned to do with improving sports all throughout this country because it's a very important learning skill of life. When I participated in team sports, it teaches you discipline, it teaches you how to win, it teaches you how to lose, it teaches you teamwork. These are important characteristics to build our country on. We talked about agriculture. We went to the 7 crops. We said, let us become self-sufficient in agriculture. We're not going to be self-sufficient in a whole bunch of things that we can't be competitive in. Let's pick the things that we're competitive in. And that's what we were doing. And then we said, let us now, bananas in particular, rum, Chairman's, let us allow those products to benefit from tourism. Because tourism exposes those products to foreigners. And when they go back home, and particularly with now internet shopping, was great. I was so happy with Barron's, right? Because Barron's products were not being displayed on the table at the hotels because he just had the big bottle. He listened, and he went and he produced the small bottles. And I think that we need to be pushing all of the hotels to make it mandatory that the ketchup comes from him, the pepper sauce is coming from him, okay? And that because those are the long-lasting benefits that we get. And we have to concentrate on those things. And that's why we were tying the marketing board into our overall tourism product. We should be marketing our agro-processing products where we see the most tourism arrivals coming from. New York City, Washington, D.C., Florida, Toronto, and London. Those are where we're core. And so there's a benefit to all of those things. When we have British tourists coming here, show them our bananas, get them hooked on our bananas, and tell them when they go back home, this is where they're going to buy it. And sadly, this government has not bought into that holistic approach. Healthcare. If you're going to bring secondary home market here, so when we look at Cabot will have a small hotel, but the biggest part of Cabot is all of the villas they're building. Now we need to train the people to work in the villas, not just as housekeepers, chefs, technical support people, villa managers, because they're going to want to rent them out. So when you go now to the Hamptons or you go to Barbados and you see the impact of the villa market, it's massive. It has even a bigger spillover than what tourism is. But you need hotel rooms, Tim, to drive your airlift. Look what's going on in St. Lucia now. You have a government that, when I tell you, clueless. You had a prime minister who already admitted he knew nothing about tourism. You have a minister of tourism who knows nothing about tourism. You have a chairman of the tourist board that knows nothing about tourism. They came in, all the advertising went away, the big jazz festival, okay, but it's $12 million or $14 million. And that's money that could have been spent on marketing the destination and driving demand for the destination, particularly in this recessionary period. So they've dropped the ball. The American Airlines out of Chicago, gone. American Airlines out of Dallas, gone. JetBlue out of Newark, gone. The second flight out of Miami on American Airlines, gone. Now, we're going to get back Virgin one flight. I don't know how much they've had to pay for that extra flight. Look what's happening interregionally. They are clueless. And not only are the hotels paying the price because it becomes so expensive to come to St. Lucia, but St. Lucians who wanted to come home this summer could not even get a flight. St. Lucians who wanted to leave to go somewhere else can't get a flight. And if they found a flight, it was so expensive they decided not to go. So when you have an inept government, a government that, in my opinion, have breached the trust of the people of this country and want to blame everybody else. You're 2 years in government. You won with this wonderful mandate. Stop trying to convince the people of St. Lucia that I'm somehow upset. I went and sat in my position. I know what my role of the leader of the opposition is, and I accept that role because that's part of the democratic process. And my job is to keep the government accountable, to hold them accountable to the policies that they're either implementing or not implementing, and to be able to uphold the Constitution. So that's why I say when we go back to the original things, these are not petty things, these are not personal. This is about our country. We must make sure that the processes that we elected to have, that they're in place.
But ensuring that we thrive going forward and we make meaningful progress in St. Lucia definitely will require some kind of unity on the part of the people. So far we are just so divided. And as a result of this, we're not properly utilizing the human resource that we have at our disposal.
So you hit the nail on the head.
Let's put the telephone number on screen. You can call with questions and comments.
So when you ask the question, why is it that some of these things have not happened, is because you have a political party in the Labour Party that flip-flops. So when they're in opposition, they demonize foreign direct investment in this country. They demonize tourism. Now all of a sudden they're in government and these are wonderful things. Okay? We are challenging our institutions because we don't trust the information that we're getting as to whether in fact there's corruption or no corruption, and everything becomes highly politicized. Now we have to recognize as a society that I think that there are certain things that we should not be fighting over. I think that there should be a common policy on foreign affairs. I think there should be a common policy on foreign direct investment in this country, and then let's go and fight about the other things. But those two things in particular are way too important to allow it to be politicized to the extent that it is being politicized. So right now in St. Lucia,
I think we have our first call online. Good evening to you. This is Newsmaker Live. You're on the air.
Good evening, Tim, and good evening to the next Prime Minister, Alan Chastanet. How are you guys doing?
good sir, how are you?
Good evening to you, caller.
Tim, I want to pose a question to the leader of the opposition. We know that the hospital, the medical situation in St. Lucia is in a deplorable state. I mean, the doctors strike, the clinic in Beaufort is closed down until further notice. At the hospitals, both at the Owen King Hospital and at St. Jude, which is not I wouldn't consider to be a hospital. There's no medication, no bed space. People, when they have to do their blood samples, have to go outside to get their blood samples done. What is your vision when you return as Prime Minister to improve or to change around our fortunes when it comes to the healthcare situation? Because I know you had a plan for a comprehensive universal healthcare, medical insurance up to $75,000 for each St. Lucian. So what are your plans insofar as healthcare is concerned? Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling, sir.
This was something that we gave a tremendous amount of consideration to when we were in opposition previously. And when we came into the government, we spent the first year and a half meeting with the civil servants, meeting with the World Bank and the IMF, CDB, and going through all of the different options. I mean, Dr. King headed up a team. We met with the Medical and Dental Association, all of those entities. And our conclusion was, like we had thought in opposition, that the best thing to do is to introduce healthcare insurance. Healthcare insurance is substantially different to universal healthcare. So universal healthcare, in the traditional sense, is a promise by the government to pay all of your expenses. The government of St. Lucia is not currently in the financial position to pay for all of the health care for everyone. So the goal is to make it compulsory for everyone to have insurance. Every single person. Now, those persons who had jobs above a certain salary, they would make a contribution like they do with NIC. Persons below a certain salary working for the private sector would expected that the private sector would have paid the entire insurance for them. And the same thing in government. Persons below a certain grade, the government would pay the insurance for them, and everybody above a certain grade would participate by paying half. All of the persons who were unemployed, all of those single mothers who don't have jobs, and all of the elderly people who have been retired, the government of St. Lucia was going to pay their insurance for them. This program was going to generate about $60 to $70 million a year of additional revenue. Now, the government of St. Lucia would have kept paying the salaries for the nurses and doctors, paid the utility prices, the utility cost, and paid all the capital cost. So this is very, very, very different to what you're seeing taking place in St. Lucia today, when this government is going to come and tell you that they're going to provide maternity care for 2,000 people, and they want to call that universal health care. And when we all know what is taking place right now at OKEU, not only is the building falling apart, but sadly, you can't even get medication.
Hold that point, sir. We have a call. Good evening. Thanks for holding on. You're on the air. Hello. Good evening to you, caller. You are on the air.
Good evening, Tim, and good evening, Mr. Chastanet.
Hi. Good evening to you, caller.
Mr. Chastanet, to me, I heard in Parliament once that they said there was no plan found of your $75,000 per person for health care. There was absolutely no plan found that they could at least continue it. I would like to hear your response to that. And the second thing I'd like to say, Tim, is to tell Ian he should probably come home.
Okay, Colin. No, Maypri, we don't want to identify anybody because we will certainly not identify you.
So,
go ahead, Colin.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. The fact that there was no plan is because we were already implementing. The plan was in the first year and a half. In fact, with the World Bank, we had consultants here, with the delivery unit and the Ministry of Health. We were already in the process of implementing it. We had already been discussions with several of the different insurance companies. Because remember, we were providing a basic insurance, which was going to be about $800 to $1,000 per person. And then people now, if they wanted to top that up with the private sector insurance companies, they could have. We looked at BVI. We looked at so many other different examples. So the fact is we were past the planning stage and we were on the process of implementing it. And that's why I can quote the numbers that I am quoting, that it was about $1,000 per year, and it would have given people about $75,000 worth of coverage. So it means that the same maternity mothers that they're talking about, who are restricted now and have to go to a health clinic. So it's not even their own doctor. With the health insurance, they were free to go to any doctor.
We have a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chastanet.
Good evening to you, caller.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Mr. Chastanet, I heard you said that when a hotel is shut down, there's no revenue from that hotel, right?
I didn't say that.
Well, to me, that's what I got it from you earlier on. There is no income. There's nothing happening.
No, I said the presumption is, if you do not have a hotel room, if a hotel room does not exist, does it generate any jobs or does it generate any taxes?
Okay, all right. Well, definitely, if you do not have one of them, it will not generate any job or anything like that.
Correct.
Now, when you look at Banans Bay, Banans Bay, hello?
Yes, sir.
Banans Bay has been shut down since I was a little boy. Yeah, you had Texaco, I think, in the bottom there.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
That place has been a dump yard, a trash place. Nothing at all was not happening there. Today, Mr. Chastanet, there's more than 40 young men have been employed down in that Banans Bay. On the badge you see, presently at Banans Bay. We need to say bravo to somebody like Reno, who has that vision for that area in Banans Bay. And we have a problem, Mr. Chastanet. Another one. What happened to the place at Point Seraphin? Is not a foreigner that bought that spot there and built in a hotel?
Correct.
Pardon me?
Yes, he is.
All right. And we didn't have a problem if this foreign company buying that property, which is on the waterfront.
So, can you stay on the air for 1 second? Do you mind?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's look at those two examples. So when the property was sold to the foreigners, they agreed that they were going to build a 150-room hotel with a convention facility. With the Banans, we didn't even know that Renault bought it. We knew that Renault's daughter bought it. And when we asked the questions as to whether it's Renault's daughter or Renault who bought it, and what's the plan, up until today, sir, nobody knows what's going to take place at Banans. And the reality is, if you were going to sell that property for $2.5 million, why would you have not made that property public? Why would you have not allowed anybody else and then chosen the best plan? How can you just hand it and circumvent the system by not even saying it was Renault that's going to get the property? And particularly when you knew that the GPH deal was going to come and the value of that land has gone up. So why Renault? Why for $2.5 million? And can you tell me, other than cleaning up the property, what is Renault intending to use that land for?
Go ahead, caller.
Mr. Chastanet,
sir,
that property, right, in you call it Point Seraphin, that was never publicized. Nobody knew about it. We only saw foreign people just started driving by in that area, right? And we knew then it was a hotel. They had difficulties during the COVID time for the operation of the taxi drivers and the cruise ship, getting in and side or point surfing.
But there was no
big problems.
There was no ships during the COVID period. So, sir, I don't think that you're correct. And the fact that was a deal
just after the COVID, they had problems.
That was a deal that was done. That was a deal that was done by Invest Saint Lucia, which is charged to bring investment into this country.
All right, caller. Thank you. You think?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, that's what we have to ask. There has to be transparency and accountability. You know, and you can see that there is a 7-story building going up, right, with a major hotel and a major brand with a conference facility.
You have the call. Good evening, NewsMakerLive, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Timothy. Hi, Mr. Chastanet.
Good evening to you, caller.
So I have a question in regards to creating some sort of unity on the island that allows the majority to see the vision as opposed to following a bunch of selfish leaders who are in it for self-gain, right? So we need someone who has a group of people who are all on the same page, and we all want to make St. Lucia a better place. We all want improvements. We all want development. How do you propose that there'll be some sort of unity? Like, do you have a plan for that? Because a lot of people will say what they don't like, say what is wrong, sometimes in secret, sometimes publicly. But I feel that when it comes to actually band together, in order to make these progressive movements, a lot of people shy away. So do you have any plans to try to get people on board and really care about St. Lucia the way they say and claim that they care?
Thank you, ma'am.
It's a great question. I go around and I get asked that question a lot. I mean, it's a very real concern for a lot of people. That's why, look, my song has always been action speaks louder than words. I came in as Prime Minister. I said it was going to take me 3 years because a lot of the things that we were doing behind the scenes was restructuring and getting this country to work in a unity. We brought this country where we had reduced the unemployment rate. I think that we were on the verge of a significant takeoff, and unfortunately COVID came. I'm proud of how we handled the COVID. I'm sorry that it became as politicized as it was, but as we got closer to elections, it became even more politicized. So the real answer to your question is unfortunately, people have to participate. This idea that you didn't want to vote for either one of the parties, unfortunately, when there's two parties, sometimes you have to vote for the lesser of the two evils. I can only do what I can do, and I agree with you. Even in my own party, you take Stephenson King. When I look now at the Saint-Lucia project in Choiseul, right? We were working for over 2 years with the Ministry of Infrastructure to get the road relocated. And it didn't happen. And now I can look back and say, wow, the sabotaging started from that early? Now, that's politics. It's my fault that I didn't pick up on Stephenson King's betrayal earlier, and it cost us the election. It prevented development from taking place at the pace it should have. But here you have today, Stephenson King is the Minister of Infrastructure. Look at the nonsense that's going on at the Millennium Heights. Look at the disgrace that we call our roads. He made allegations that there was corruption on the Rodney Bay Road, on the Rodney Road. Where 2 years has gone by. A contract that was going to cost us $15 million is now going to cost us in excess of double the amount because of his ineptness.
We have a call. Good evening, NewsMakerLive, you're on the air.
Pleasant good evening to you, Timothy, and your listeners all over the world. PW on the line. I want to ask Mr. Chastanet, what I live in Rodney Bay. Now, it has been 2+ years that this 4-lane highway, nothing has been done on it. The more it sits there, I can tell you, the more it will cost the government. I would like to ask Mr. Chastanet, as he is in opposition, what is the latest on this four-lane Rodney Bay rehabilitation road program. What is the latest? Because we St. Lucians, we are losing money on this project. The government of St. Lucia need to finish up this road in Rodney Bay. Mr. Chastanet, I know that you're in opposition, but what are you hearing about the road in Rodney Bay?
Thank you, sir.
Sadly, I'm not hearing anything. What I heard was like everybody else before the elections, the allegations of corruption. When Steve became the minister, continued as the minister, made all these allegations of corruption. But the meanwhile, it was $15 million to do the road. 4 lanes, median, sidewalks, 2 roundabouts, and a pedestrian walkway for $15 million. And they said that was absorbent and that there was corruption. Now today, when they stop the project, the contractor is now going to get paid on works done. My understanding is, I don't know because I'm not getting the information, is that the assessment is larger than $15 million. So it means they have to pay the contractor more than $15 million and then now go and find a new contractor. But I know that this government are so political because it's always about protecting the victory, they do not want to come out and admit the truth and show the incompetence. And you're 100% right. It's not only the money we've lost, the hundreds and thousands of hours of inconveniences created. And here you have Rodney Bay, which is your prime tourism area that looks like a ghetto. It's insane. And all the work that's been done has been now lost. But that is what this government does. It's about protecting the victory. All the allegations that they made, they now are still trying to hold on to those allegations, despite the facts are coming out now, okay, that there was none.
We have a call. Good evening. NewsMakerLive, you're on the air.
Good evening, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, caller. Good evening.
Mr. Chastanet.
Yes, sir.
As Prime Minister of St. Lucia, you collected $1.50 on every gallon of gas for the last 5 years.
Not for 5 years, but
for
go
the
ahead.
5 years that you were in office.
No, sir.
You collected $1.50 on every gallon of gas.
Not for the 5 years, but go ahead, sir.
Oh, no, okay. Tell us how many years.
No problem.
The point is that this present government is in office, and they cannot find a lockbox that you said that money was going into. Up to now, that they have been in office for 2 years, and they cannot locate that lockbox. So please tell the government where our tax money is, please. That's what we want to know.
So,
secondly, Mr. Chastanet, you know fully well, and the Honorable Minister Stevenson King made the point that when you hired that person, the engineer for the contractor for the roads, the fallen highway in Rodney Bay, he told you that person was not competent enough to do the job. And after his investigations, he found a lot of nonsense that was done by that particular contractor. And you gave that contractor, like you always do, with your direct awards. And that's all you did in the 5 years that you spent in government, only giving us direct awards of taxpayers' money, some of them over $50 million of taxpayers' money in direct awards. You spent $180 million of taxpayers' money, which this particular government had to pay in debt to the people of St. Lucia. And then you're complaining about the situation of our roads. You know, what did you spend the $180 million on? Tell us, direct awards, $180 million that this government had to pay and have to find monies now to continue our road development. This Prime Minister had spoke about a comprehensive plan.
So can I answer your question? Can I answer your question?
Okay, thank you, sir.
So first of all, there were 2 major road contracts. The first one was done with the Taiwanese. And the Taiwanese, we had $43 million US dollars to the projects under the Ministry of Infrastructure. Okay? There was a 5-year moratorium on that loan. And the $1.50 was what was assigned to be able to pay that loan off. So that's where the $1.50 went. When COVID came and we saw the opportunity, because there wasn't as much traffic on the roads and we needed to create jobs, we went to 3 contractors, and each one of them gave us a contract for $50 million. I want you to understand, they went and borrowed the money themselves. Fresh Start, Nationwide and Renault. 50 million each, $150 million. And those contracts were done to be paid off in 5 years. Why 5 years? So the moratorium that we had on the Taiwanese monies, during that period, the $1.50 that we were collecting would go to pay off those sets of loans. And then when now the Taiwanese loans came due, we would continue to pay with the $1.50. The Rodney Bay Road was not a direct award to the engineer. In fact, the engineer that you're making reference to was hired by the same Minister Stevenson King. And he got upset because the gentleman got frustrated, just like I was frustrated, that this Rodney Bay Road was not being done. And let me tell you the game that Minister King and other people in the Ministry of Infrastructure played. They would tell you that the roundabout needed to be between the two supermarkets, the two shopping centers. No matter how you do design, you cannot put it between there. There's not enough space. So finally the gentleman came with Fresh Start and said, here, the solution to the problem is put a roundabout by where the two pillars are and put another roundabout by where MJI was. Eventually the Ministry of Infrastructure, because King said there was never involvement of infrastructure. It is infrastructure that told them, no, move the roundabout to where the old Il Pirata is, by where the aquatic center, to go on La Tourette Road. So that's all nonsense. That's all political gibberish that you're talking. The $1.50 is there and they were collecting it. The contracts were given based on the fact that the $1.50 was going to be used to pay back those loans. And I'm grateful to those contractors for borrowing the money themselves, and it didn't come across on the debt of our books at a time when we needed it the most. But you see, you can't be convenient. You said that we did those contracts for our benefit. Now, what did we do? When we saw how long it was taking Stevenson King to implement the $100 million with the Taiwanese, we said there's no way that he was going to do it. So we assigned an engineer, like has been done in the past, that reports to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Infrastructure to produce those roads. And look how fast they were able to deliver those roads during COVID. Now, how is it that Stevenson King now, he says that he's the man, he's the Mr. Great Guy. I don't see it. I'm now more convinced than ever that all he is dead weight. Millennium Highway. Why? Why are we suffering the way we're suffering? Why is the West Coast Road so far behind on its trajectory? Why is it the roads in this country are in such deplorable conditions? Him. He is the problem. And he is the one that's costing this country millions of dollars. We were fully transparent. All the money is there. The Ministry of Finance, the Director of Finance, all of them signed off on it. They knew exactly where the money was going to come from to pay for those loans.
Good evening. NewsMakerLive, you're on the air. Hello? Hello, good evening. Okay, I think we'll have this call. Let's wait another call so that somebody can either pose a question or make a contribution. Hold that point. We have a call. Good evening. NewsMakerLive, you're on the air.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
Yes, sir.
My advice for you is let us get the party organized, because that SLP party is falling apart. The people are already everybody is fed up of SLP because all what they promised, they have not delivered and they will never deliver. People that support SLP, campaign for SLP, are calling me and telling me they have gas and they have nothing to cook. And I am the one that are helping them sometimes. And I've been advising them, they know what to do next election. So I'm advising you to get the party organized, because UDOP SLP will try and get us on our way. They will work in a way to get us on our way. So let us get our candidates, let us organize the party, so whenever they ring that bell, leaks in there, and I stop there.
All right, caller.
You know,
so much.
the caller, in saying what he's saying, is wherever you go in St. Lucia, there's one cry: the cost of living. And what's so sad, you know, you played a clip today on your show, Tim, of the Prime Minister basically making a joke of the cost of living, which was not the same attitude he had in opposition. But this is a government that almost throws their hands in the air. There's nothing that they can do. These are all imported. But I want to remind people, it was the government who decided to not to subsidize the gas at the pump. It's this government that allowed bus fares to go up. It's this government that doubled the price of cooking gas. It's this government that allowed the price of electricity to go up, particularly to the more vulnerable people in our society. And what they have done is they have now built inflation into our economy. And when we were making recommendations, the things that the government have are the VAT rate and the taxes and the duties. Now, how are you going to tell me, a time like this where people are suffering to the extent that they are, Tim, people are in pain in terms of the choices that they have to make in life, and you're there talking about, you recognize that there is inflation, and you're going to put on another 2.5% tax? Now, let's think for a moment. Let me tell you how incompetent this government is. This government had 2 years to think about implementing the tax. They came to the House, and at the last minute, instead of doing what they were going to do, which was have it increase the VAT to 15%. And you have to ask yourself the question, why is it that this government did not believe they could sell increasing the VAT to 15%? But instead, they want to fool the people. They tell them they're going to introduce a levy for health and security. Even though we pointed out at the time that the health budget went down by $10 million. So where's the money going to? And the falsity of it all, which is at our expense. Here you are now, they've implemented it. They have to delay it now till October. Nobody knows how to implement the tax. And you don't believe that this compounded tax is going to have a catastrophic impact on the cost of living in this country? How can you reduce the cost of living by increasing taxes? Where on earth have you heard anybody think that they can do that? It's absurd. And it's time that people call this government for what they are. They are a bunch of jokers. They are bluffers. They lied their way into government. And they are laughing and benefiting at the expense of the people of this country. And they're putting the future of this country in jeopardy. And we all are going to have to wake up, because not only are they doing it economically, look what's happening with unemployment. If you want to resolve the cost of living problems in St. Lucia, give people jobs. What have you done? You stopped all the projects. All of them. You want to go and say, oh, unemployment is at a 10-year low. Your own statistics showed you that you cannot make the comparison. All of us can see what's going on the ground. People are unemployed and becoming more unemployed every day. And how do you combat inflation? You don't have a job. How do you destroy the agricultural sector? So the little basic things of getting some green fig and some bananas, you can't get it. There's no plan.
We have a final call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you on the air?
Yes, good evening, Tim. How are you?
All right, final call.
Good evening to Mr. Chastanet.
Good evening, sir.
Okay. I heard a caller ask about the money in the lockbox, but I did not hear Mr. Chastanet answer that question, you know.
Oh, I did.
He went about to talk about Stephenson King.
No, sir.
And,
no, sir.
And
no,
the project and $50 million and
so
whatnot.
Let me repeat it. Let me repeat it again for you, sir. The $1.50 was assigned to the Taiwanese loan. The Taiwanese loan had a 5-year moratorium on it. So the contracts that we gave out, the direct awards to the 3 contractors during COVID, were for a 5-year period. So the $1.50 went to pay off those loans first, and then would have continued to pay off the other loans. And everything had been arranged through the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance knew the revenue to pay off those loans, where were they going to come from?
But if you say you had a 5-year moratorium on it, then how come the money is used already?
Because we built the roads during COVID, sir. When COVID came and people were unemployed,
We took additional loans during that time to do this. As far as I know, we took additional loans during that time to do this project.
Yes, we did. And so we used the 5-year moratorium, the money that would have been accumulating in the lockbox for the 5 years was used to pay for the $150 million of loans from the 3 contractors.
So in other words, you're saying that these monies did not, it did not reach, and the moratorium did not end yet before we used these monies?
Correct. So we had the moratorium for 5 years, sir. When COVID came, right, we knew we had that 5-year space where we were going to collect the $150, which was about $30 million a year, and we would not have had to pay off the principal of the loan, only the interest. So what we did is when we did the contracts with Renault, with Nationwide, and with Fresh Start, $50 million each, they borrowed the money. And the terms of borrowing the money was at an interest rate and for the 5-year period of time, which means that we could have covered it during the moratorium period. But the money to pay them was coming from the $1.50 tax.
Okay. So there is you saying that there's clear evidence that money was used to cover these loans.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if somebody has something else, whether somebody else can refute what you say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for calling, sir. Let's see if we could take at least one final call on the broadcast, and then we'll get some final comments from my guest. Once again, the leader of the opposition and MP for Mico South, Mr. Alan Chastanet. I think momentarily we will be able to take that call. Okay, I think we're ready now to take that final call. Good evening to you, NewsMakerLive. Hello.
Hi.
Good evening to you, caller.
I want to speak.
Yes, good evening. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Tim.
Yes, go ahead, caller. Hello.
Hi, Timothy. How are you doing?
I'm okay, caller. Go ahead with your contribution, sir.
I just want to congratulate Mr. Chastanet. This is Peter Josie.
I picked up the voice, Peter.
And I just want to tell him how I admire his energy. This is the leader I always wish to see.
Well, you know, Peter...
And I hope I can meet you somewhere sometime soon to give you a good whiskey and ice so we can have a drink together, because that energy deserves something.
Well, Peter, you know...
And I discovered today that your wife, Raquel, is celebrating her birthday this evening.
And I'm not even there with her.
Thank you so much.
Peter, I'm glad that you brought that up, because, my demeanor in the past has always been, I'm a pragmatist. I don't want people to confuse my emotion with what the facts are, right? But it really is painful to see what's going on in our country right now. It is.
Final comments from you?
My final comments are that I made a statement a couple of weeks ago that the people in this country are living in fear. And that's exactly what's taken place. And that fear is being deliberately perpetuated by this government. That when you see the kinds of things that they are going to do to extract revenge, their overall arching concern with protecting the victory. And when you see now the interference that's taking place in the judicial system, it's frightening. But I want to say to St. Lucians that remaining silent and being scared of victimization has never worked. You cannot acquiesce our democracy. We cannot acquiesce our rights to this government. And our silence, that is exactly what we're doing. Democracy depends on our institutions working. And that's why I go after the rule of law. The rule of law is what keeps this democracy going. I mean, in our own Constitution, if I was just to read one part of it, it says, whereas every person in St. Lucia is entitled to the fundamental rights and freedoms, that is to say, the right, whatever his race, place of origin, political opinions, color, creed, or sex, but subject to respect for the rights and freedoms of others and for the public interest to each and all of the following, namely, life, liberty, security of the person, equality before the law, and the protection of the law, freedom of conscience, of expression, and of assembly and association, protection for his family life, his personal privacy, the privacy of his home and other property, and from deprivation of the property without compensation. The provisions of this chapter shall have effect of the purpose of affording protection to those rights and freedoms, subject to such limitations of that protection as are contained in those provisions, being limitations designed to ensure that the enjoyment of the said rights and freedoms by any person does not prejudice the rights and the freedoms of others in the public interest. That's what our Constitution. This is a contract, Tim. This is a contract that the people of St. Lucia have given to say that I'm going to allow politicians, elected politicians, I'm going to allow civil servants who I'm going to pay their salaries. That's who pays their salaries, is the taxpayers of this country. To make discretionary decisions on my part, with the understanding that it is within their law. And the rule of law is what binds those persons to this Constitution. And so when we are silent on these issues, when we say nothing on these issues, we cannot then turn around and wonder why we're living in fear. If we collectively stand together, this government cannot intimidate any one of us. And this is why I've taken the time tonight to say to Tim repeatedly that this government is in breach of the trust that the people put in it. Everywhere you turn around in this country, you see people are suffering. And all this government can do is to make excuses. Every day they are caught in another lie. My party is organizing. United Workers' Party will be stronger than ever, and we would have learned from what the things that we've done wrong. We want to know that we are men and women that are committed to the same cause, not to Alan Chastanet, not to anybody else personally in the party, but to ideals of democracy, ideals of developing this country. That is what we stand for. On Sunday, we're going to be having a town hall meeting in Ancillary. And very soon, we are going to ask the people of this country who have lost trust in these people, who believe in democracy, who believe in our Constitution and want these things to thrive, that I'm going to ask all of you, that regardless of which political party that you support, the men and women who represent the Labour Party, and what is taking place in government today, and the fear they're instilling on people, it must stop. And it's only when we speak unified with one voice that they will listen. Every single time that there is a threat to the Labour Party and their ability to protect the victory, they change. We have to do this now before it's too late. Our education system is collapsing before our very eyes. Our healthcare system is collapsing before our eyes. The agriculture sector is gone. The tourism sector is under significant threat. And this government is only going to tax its way out because they believe that they are entitled to earning money. The $33 million you're expecting to get from the levy, why didn't they cut the traveling? Why didn't they cut some of the exorbitant expenses that they have? So there's a lot more I have to say, and I'll speak more directly on the cost of living, on education, security in this country, which has gone to hell in a basket, unemployment in this country. We're going to speak on all those things on Sunday. United Workers' Party has always had a plan. The only thing the Labour Party knows how to do is to beat Pan. That's all they can do. So, Tim, thank you very much for the opportunity tonight. I'm again asking your viewers, join our show on Sunday on GTV. I'm sorry, it's a competitor. And also on our social media sites.
Thank you so much for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live. To you, thank you as always for watching and contributing via your calls and your conversation in the chat room.